Yeah, I'm Jackson. I have zero experience with carpentry.
I studied at a school for historic preservation in Boston and learned about how things were built, 250 years ago.
There's a long way to go. I'm nowhere near the top. Not that I thought I was, but there's so much more to do out there.
Welcome back to the Passion for Craft podcast. We are really excited to have Lydia Crowder here zooming in with us today. Lydia, I'm going to give you a small intro, then I'd love you to fill in the blanks. But Lydia is a drywall expert, also known as Drywall Shorty, on all the social media platforms. And she's up in Bozeman, Montana, killing the drywall game up there. Is there anything I missed, Lydia?
I don't think so. I mean, Brent and I are both Build Show contributors, which is awesome. So we both do that. And yeah, just trying to help and educate and bring some light to the trade.
So I got to know Lydia, as she said, on the Build Show Network. If you guys aren't going there, you need to check that out. There's a bunch of contributors speaking into a bunch of the different trades. And so I thought Lydia would be great because she's done such a great job with the social media. Her videos are very engaging and very, to watch her pull her knife across there and do all the things she's doing. It's fun to watch. So,
yeah, it is. Lydia, we would love for you, just for our listeners, just to give a small background on yourself, how you got into the drywall game per se. Yeah, and then we basically just want to talk about the state of craft in drywall, and just kind of get your take on how craft is trending in America. But if you'd start with just a small background of how you got into drywall.
Definitely. So I got into drywall with my dad. I went to college first semester, wasn't a great fit, pretty much flunked out. And I had never really liked school, so I don't know why I thought it was going to be a good choice. But anyway, I went to college first semester, was kind of lost. I didn't know what to do with myself. And he was like, do you want a job? And I had kind of worked with them here and there when I was a kid and helped out, like simple stuff. And yeah, I just did not expect to love it like I did. So I started working with him, and he did not let me off easy. He put me through the ringer, made sure I really wanted to do this. And it's just kind of started there, and I'm now 20 years into finishing.
Brain dead. So I was curious. We did a whole episode on school versus the trades, college versus the trades, trying to balance that out. Eric Ani was on here. He's on the Build Show. He also went to college for a semester or two. He had actually claims to have been a good student in high school. What was it, you were just partying and just having a good time and school wasn't it? Or were you called back to the trades because you wanted to work with your hands? What happened there, and what advice kind of, input would you have to us as far as, whether going the school route versus the trade route and how that worked out?
Definitely. So at the time, I definitely was partying too much. I partied in high school. I went to school. I don't know why I thought I was not gonna. I don't know what I was. Anyway, bad decision. And it was pretty much just a waste of money and a lot of beer. So my roommate at the time actually worked for my dad. So my dad had my cousin work for him, and then this particular person was my cousin's best friend. So he lived really close to campus, and he had a brother move out. So he's like, come move in with me. So I was like, okay, sweet. It's close to campus. We'll just walk to school. No, he was 21, 22. I was 18. So I'm hanging out with, 21-year-old guys all day, which, that's just bad. But they were all doing drywall. So I would go and help them, and they all worked for my dad. So it kind of just fit naturally. It just kind of worked in there. So they would help me. I would go help them on jobs. We would work weekends. We would kind of work evenings, and it just fit. And I think something that was huge for me is I don't like sitting at a desk. I like reading and I like education, but I have a really hard time sometimes following set things that people put out. I don't necessarily like always following the rules, or I don't like, sitting in a classroom and being told what to do. I'm more of a hands-on learner, and I want to do things my own way. So I think that's really where, the trades and being hands-on really fit in, because when you're at work, you guys know, you have to make decisions and you have to try different things, and it keeps you on your toes, and you have to be creative, and every single day is different. And I think that's really what drew me to the trades, is the flexibility, the the variety of work, the challenges, the physical challenges also, which are really nice, and then just the gratification of looking at what you did. I mean, it's awesome to come back and see, man, I did that. I did that. I figured that out. It's there's nothing like it.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a lot of really cool ideas. I mean, it is kind of funny to hear you say, school was probably never the route for you. And then just talking about being a creative problem solver on the job and doing that. It just kind of takes me back to that conversation that we had on the trades versus going the schooling route. And, it really seems that people who are more drawn towards the trade really do want that creative stimulus of, okay, I've got a new problem every day. How do I figure this out? How do I make things come together? And then on top of that, at least in the people who have become masters, which I think you would fall into that category, where you're doing these new things day in and day out, and maybe school isn't as stimulating. But again, it's not that you dislike the educational piece of it. I've heard you say on your episodes on the Build Show Network that you're very passionate about education, and that's kind of how Drywall Shorty came about. Was you just were interested in educating people, like what mud should I use, what tool should I use here, which I think is a really cool balance that gets struck between most tradespeople in as a whole, which is really interesting.
I think we kind of forget. I mean, education is so important. If we don't have engineers, we don't have architects, we don't have these people that actually love school and doing those things, we as construction can't work. So we really do work together. And one thing I hate is this idea of, you walk on site and say you're the architect or something, and then the tradespeople look down on the architect. They think the architect looks down on them, or kind of this like mutual disrespect for each other. But honestly, neither of us can work without the other one. So just a respect for, hey, like not everybody needs to go to school, but I commend you for going to school, sticking through it, educating yourself, and getting a degree. And then I commend you for knowing that that's not the right route. And thank you for building these beautiful things I'm designing. Like, I wish there was more cohesiveness in kind of education and trades and everybody working together.
Totally. And that's definitely what we settled on as well, that there needs to be this mutual respect between the two, and that each different route just depends on the type of person who needs to go into it. Well, one question I think that we would love to hear is you might be looking at a room full of cynics over here because we're builders per se, and I say per se because I don't know if I could classify myself as one yet, but apprentice builder at least. But one thing that we've noticed is the state of building is kind of in disarray, and it's the materials that are used. It's the way that things are quickly slapped together. People are assembling things, they're not building things. Now, I'm wondering, are you optimistic about the state that drywall is in right now, or is there a similar trend amongst drywall? I mean, obviously with us, we're looking at doors and windows that are made out of cardboard and sheet metal, thin aluminum foil. And so, is there kind of a comparable miss going on right now in drywall, or is drywall in a really good spot as a trade?
That's a good question. Drywall as a whole hasn't changed that much since it was introduced in like the 40s. Like gypsum and the way that there's been a lot of new muds that have come out and compounds that are more user friendly. That's a good question. I haven't really seen it change a lot. I would say it's gotten faster, which therefore you have to decrease quality. So I'd say we get pushed a lot more, or people in general get pushed a lot more on the end from the builders, because it seems like when we get in there, something's behind. The HVAC got pushed back, the electrical got pushed back, something happened to make the job now be 2 weeks behind. And where are they going to make it up? They're going to make it up on the finishing end. So the minute you get in there, people are like, when are you going to be done? Are you done tomorrow? Are you going to be like, I need you to get done. Are you working the weekend? Hey guys, it's
Right.
Christmas. It doesn't mean you can be off. And it's kind of turned into this attitude of, I really don't care. It'll get covered. No one will ever notice it. Let's just move on. So I guess that would be a way that I see it going. We've worked on some really amazing houses up in Big Sky, but honestly, that's probably some of the worst construction I've ever seen in my life because
Why
I
was it
remember
bad?
being on it. I probably shouldn't have said this even to the guy, but he comes in and there's this big metal beam and it's about, I don't know, probably like 3-inch difference between where it starts and where it goes to the end. And we're in there finish sanding and getting ready. It's supposed to be painted like tomorrow. And I'm pretty sure it's probably the owner of the company. And this is a, $10 million house. And he walks in and he's like, oh, that's uneven and the drywall will fix it. And I looked at him and I was like, no, we can't fix that. And I'm not. And no. And he was like, oh, okay. And just walked away. And I was like, I could have handled that a little more tactfully. But it's kind of
So you're
like,
just like, no, nope.
I just like dead serious. I looked at it, I was like, no, I'm not fixing that. But stuff just kind of rolls downhill and it kind of all gets put on the finisher. But then we're pushed so much for time, we can't fix all of these things that aren't done correctly in the first place. So I guess that's kind of where I see it leading is it's just, we have such a housing shortage and a housing crisis. Nobody really cares. It's just get it up, get it done, and move on to the next one.
So with that particular scenario you're discussing, was that like a framing issue that nobody caught until it was wrapped in drywall?
Oh yeah. There was one that we did that had a basement pillar that was totally twisted, and it was drywalled. We finished it, and then the super came in and was like, "You guys did that wrong." And we're like, "No, we know our job. We did not like put everything on there all topsy turvy." And they pulled it off, and the whole beam was completely twisted. And it's just there's a lot of steel out there, but then wood, and they also frame in like -40 degrees. So there's a lot of things that happen up there that you're just like, okay, well, we'll just
I'm sure the
Band-Aid on
materials
that and
moving
it'll get
around.
remodeled in 5 years. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's
but that
interesting up there.
you're describing, I mean, working on a $10 million house where you have that kind of, just bad construction speaks to what our frustration about the state of craft and speaks to, that I think one of the biggest tragedies in building right now is, someone who spends 3, 4, 5, $10 million on a house, and it really is just kind of a big McMansion. It's a production house, with more square footage and more stuff in it. That sounds like what you're describing, and it sounds like maybe obviously the schedule and probably cost, fall downhill to you, but maybe just in the drywall trades, you're not seeing that much change. Because you're right. I mean, your trade hasn't changed that much since the 40s. Or
Yeah,
it's
I
almost
mean, there's
100 years.
automatic tools, which still, what always kind of surprises me is I've always worked with automatic tools. That's how I started. My dad's used them for forever. But there's still a huge group of people that are still hand taping and doing everything by hand, which I find really interesting because we can't move the footage that we do without those tools. So those are production tools, but when you use them right, you get really fantastic finishes. So that I think is kind of a spot where the trade is at, is hand finishers moving more towards using automatic tools because there's so much more available to see how the tools work, how the tools run. Social media has helped a lot. I feel like we're finally starting to kind of bring a light to what drywall finishing is. And, usually the finishers are kind of like looked down upon when they show up on the job, or like, oh, the drywall guys are here. We're kind of like concrete guys, like kind of on the same level. And, I don't know. I'm like, oh, the concrete guys are here. No, just kidding. But so it's kind of having a renaissance right now, I feel like.
So if you talk
Wait,
to
hold
us,
on. I've got a little bit of a dumb apprentice question. What's the difference between an automatic tool versus hand tool? I've done drywalling one time, and the paint's already cracking on it because the things have shifted so much, and I did a terrible job. And I don't want to throw Brent under the bus, but he did help with the job. So we are drywall apprentices very clearly. Sorry, I just grouped you in
Yeah,
there.
no, speak to the tools. I mean, when you talk about automatic tools versus hand tools, how much faster is it? First of all, to Jackson's question, what's the difference? And then, you talk about it helping speed. I mean, is that 50%, 10%? Walk us through that.
And then we'll hear your question.
Yeah, so automatic tools, for the most part, do everything that you would do by hand, but they are automated for you. You have to run the tool, but it speeds up the process of doing the process that you're doing, if that makes sense. So
is that like a
there's
Roomba on the wall?
Some of the sanders do. So what we use automatic tubes, they're like a big cylinder tube essentially that holds mud, and then it feeds out the mud and the tape at the same time for you. And then you have to wipe it down afterwards.
That is
so
crazy.
Instead of putting on the mud and then putting on the tape, it does both for you. And then there's boxes, which essentially are a box, and then they have blades, and then you set them to put the mud on flats and butts. So instead of coating by hand, you run the boxes and they coat your flats and butts for you. And then there's pumps, which fill up the tools, which you have to have. So if you are getting into automatic tools, you have to do pumps and have the things to fill the tools. And then there's power sanders, angle heads, which finish insides of angles. So pretty much it just takes away the hand finish. They're still hand finishing, but it speeds up the process. Oh man, I'd say at least 50, 60, 70%. It makes it very fast.
I was going to say, are those people who are using the hand tools, are they like die hard, like they want to stick to that because it's the original craft, or are they just kind of not seeing the benefit of what you guys are using?
I think it's both. I think East Coast for sure is way more hand tools. People still are doing like traditional plasters, especially on the East Coast. It's still very common to go there and you'll find people plastering. And here on the West Coast, I'd say we're more production. It's kind of like get in, get out, use the tools, and just get it done. And then I've also heard that the unions there weren't allowing automatic tools in for a while. And I think part of it too is people have seen bad jobs that people have done with automatic tools, so they don't trust them. But it's not the tool, it's the person running the tool that's the problem. So there needs to be a lot of training and education on the back end with those.
Are you, in your area, are you doing like textured finishes for final finish or level 5, or like what's going on in your region?
Yeah, so we do a lot of swirl is what it's called. It's actually kind of like an old plaster finish. So we take a big round pull trowel and we spray on mud with a big, what do we use in a Titan Speed Flow? I think it's a 6900, so a big sprayer. So we thin the mud down, spray it on the walls, and then come and make like figure 8s with the pull trowel, and it makes a swirl pattern. And people love it. It goes commercial, high-end, residential, everything. Pretty much everything is swirl.
That's crazy. I never heard of that one. We do like orange peel, knockdown, and I only see like the smooth like level 5 finish and like really high end, but they just come in, spray it, and get out.
Yeah, we do a lot of, the level 5 and that stuff is always high end or like really big commercial jobs on certain stuff. But yeah, swirl is really common here, and we do a lot of skip trowel.
Do you do any Venetian plasters or any of those things?
I've done a couple of plaster jobs. Some went well, some didn't go well. I don't know that much about plaster. So it's one of those things I kind of stay away from just because there are so many things that can go wrong with it. Makes me really nervous. And it's very expensive. So I kind of just stick to what I know. And I could do like a wall or a fireplace or something, but I tend to not really get into that end of it.
So I have a question. One, going back to what you were describing about in college that all your friends were doing drywall. I've never heard anybody say that. Is that family because, or were you just hanging with the drywall gang, or what were you?
Like the boxcar kids, the drywall gang was nearby.
What is? Tell me about that, and then talk to me about. It sounds like your dad had a big crew. And then it's you and just and your husband. Is that true? So, I mean, the size of crews have really changed. And one thing I was shocked about when I got to know you is that it's you and your husband doing, what are you, like 50 or 70 houses a year? It's like crazy how much volume you do. And so anyway, if you could speak to some of that, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, we always just, my cousin worked for my dad, and he started working for my dad in high school. So my cousin's name was Corey, and then there was Zach, who was his best friend, and then he started working for my dad also kind of in like the end of high school. And they both went to college. They left, and Corey went to try to play baseball. But then he came back and then started working for my dad again. And then Zach worked for my dad. But they were always around because my dad had all of his tools in the garage. So they would like come in and get tools. And then, yeah, we would kind of just hang out, and then kind of just got pulled into it that way too, I guess. Really, that's kind of an interesting question. Yeah, it was just my cousin and his best friend. And then I would hang out with the guys that worked for my dad because at the time he had 7 employees, I think, at that time.
Okay.
So that was back in like 2000 and when was that? 2003, 2004. So there's a subdivision just kind of down the road from me where we did a lot of houses. We did like big houses too. We did a ton out there, but yeah, just kind of surrounded myself, I guess, with construction guys, and it worked. And thankfully they all had passion for the trade, and they taught me, and they were great guys to work with. They always treated me as an equal. So that was really encouraging.
That is cool. And so was your dad actually hanging rock or just finishing rock?
Just finishing. So here is kind of unusual. We have hangers, and then we have finishers. So for the most part, like if I'm, if we're doing a job, we'll finish it and then we'll sub out the hanging, and then vice versa. Like hangers will have finishers they work with, and then finishers will have hangers that they work with. I don't know if every area is like that, but that's just kind of like a Montana thing or a Bozeman thing.
I mean, are you doing as much volume as your dad was doing, or is that a nature of the tools, or is your business just a little bit different?
I don't know how much he was doing. He did big customs. So when I was with my dad, we had a couple builders that only used him, and they did pretty big ones. Like this one neighborhood, we did a lot, and they were all pretty involved, large houses. So I don't know how much volume he was moving, but we were all using automatic tools then, and we use automatic tools now.
Okay.
And we did a big house when was it? Maybe like maybe it's about a year ago, 2 years ago. And the guy said his normal taper is a hand taper, but the job was too big. So he couldn't have him do it because of the scale. It would have just taken him forever. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing too, to think about with hand versus tools. You could be losing jobs if you're really slow, or you can't take on these large jobs if you're hand taping the same way somebody that's running tools can.
In your opinion, is there any benefit to using the old school hand tools like those guys are doing?
I think the problem that happens is people get used to a system, and they're afraid to move out of that system, because learning the automatic tools is hard. You're not just going to pick them up and be like running automatically. You got to, learn how to use them. It's going to take you probably about a year until you're really proficient with them, to where you're not having issues, you're not having tape falling off the wall, not having, constant issues. They break down. You do have to do maintenance. You have to keep them clean. So I think if you're not around them a lot, you're like, those are stupid. Why would I use those? They just cost a bunch of money and they can break. But when you are around them, you know that they're quick. They speed things up. They give you better quality sometimes, and you can move a lot of footage. But I think too, a lot of it, some of these guys are second, third, fourth generation, and they're, they learned from their dad, who was a traditional plasterer, and then their grandpa before that was traditional plastering, and they did everything with hawk and trowel. And kind of getting past that mindset there's nothing wrong with it. If they want to finish that way, that's great. I mean, there will always be difference in finishing, but I think sometimes it's just ingrained, like, this is how we finish because this is how I was taught.
So speak to us about your skill level, or how you're perceived. I mean, I would say, this show's set up with apprentice, journeyman, master. one, is there that kind of system in your deal? I know I've heard how you learned through your dad and were, doing cleanup first. But how long does it take to become proficient? You're doing it 20 years. You're a master after how long? Where do you feel like you are in kind of the proficiency of your trade?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not like a worked system. If you're union, there's a system. And I didn't even know about drywall unions because we didn't have unions here. And that's something that I've learned about later with social media and talking to people. So if you're in the union, there's definitely a step up program and you learn and then you kind of work your way up. With my dad, it was more of, okay, let's have you try this. And he was kind of the type that would just throw you into something and kind of let you figure it out on your own. He would be there to offer guidance or be like, maybe you should try it this way. But a lot of his teaching methods were, this is how I do it. I want you to do it close to this way, but here, have at it, and then let's see how it works out, and then we'll kind of adjust from there. So it's kind of a funny trade because so much of it is hands-on. You have to touch it, you have to feel it, you have to mess around with it, you have to mess up, you have to sand your own work. And that really makes you appreciate things when you first start and you're like, oh my God, that was bad. You can definitely kind of get into this like age where, you're 3-4 years in the trade and you think you know everything. And I think that's kind of the dangerous spot. I don't know if it's the same with building, but you get,
For sure.
some confidence and you get some experience, but you're still not there yet. I mean, even at 20 years, there's still stuff I'm like, I haven't seen that before, or I should maybe try doing something a little different way. And I feel like you'll never be finished learning. But yeah, with us being like self-employed in a small business, we don't really, I don't know, we just kind of have you start and then kind of work through it.
Yeah, you're right about drywall. It's or at least the mud part of it, it's such an organic, like you said, like a feeling. You got to get your hands on it. The little bit that I've tried, like I think I floated out a joint or something at my house, like real nice, and then I turned the light on, there's like a big shadow. I'm like, oh, it looks easy. Like you guys on social media, y'all make it look easy, but there's an art to that, like feathering it out, like it's
you
crazy.
Do make it look very easy, Lydia.
Well, yeah, Lydia, I worked for a ministry out in Colorado and we were remodeling the house there. And so we're saving as much money as we can. So I call in Brent. I'm like, I need some help on this remodel. So we frame it. It looks great. We get the drywall out. We cut it. We're like, we can cut drywall. Great. And then as soon as the mud and tape come into play, wow, we messed that up bad. Like literally, it was. I remember there were like 4 joints we needed to do. So not even that many square feet of drywall, but we're like, we've got them set, we've got them nailed in, and we're like putting the mud in place, and then we put the tape on top of the mud, and then we put mud on top of the tape, and my dad was like, and we've done this for like all 4 joints, and he's like, you know what? There's a chance that we're not supposed to put mud first and tape first. We both had this moment where I was like, well, I don't know what we need to do. And he was like, dude, out of everything, drywall is so hard. And it is such a touch thing. Because then you call in these drywall people and they come in and they're like, bah, bah, bah. And then a wall's finished. And you're like,
a flat wall.
Yeah, a flat wall's finished. And then not to mention now we filled in a doorway. And it's really funny because people are like, y'all remodeled in here? And we're like, yeah, we did. If you look at the cracked paint over there, you can see the outline of a doorway where it shifted. So I have royally butchered some great drywall walls. It really is. It's such a finessed touch trade. It's really cool.
One thing we were talking about is that 10,000 hours, how long it takes to become proficient. 10,000 hours, if you're working a 40-hour week, which we probably all are working more than that, is 5 years. So do you think that in your trade you become a master in 5 years or, 10 years or, you're saying 20 and there's still things to learn? And I agree, I agree with that.
Is that math right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you can ever call yourself a master per se with drywall because it is so, it's kind of like arty and everything is just so different. Like you really never know what you're going to walk into. So yeah and no. I mean, there's old guys that I've worked with that are all, hawk and trowel, or they are kind of more traditional, but I don't know. I wouldn't even know if they would say that they were masters. I mean, even with 40 years in the trade, you still learn. Like my dad's still learning new stuff. Like we talk all the time about like, oh man, did you see this? Or what do you think I should do about this? Or it's so fun because we each have our separate companies, and he's still working, but we'll still like have conversations and kind of work through like, I don't know, what are you going to do here? Or what's going on with this? Or it's really fun because we can troubleshoot together. And I think that's something like that's really important for crafts and trades in general, is just having that person that you can talk to and bounce ideas off of. And, whether it be somebody that's considered a master, or maybe somebody that just has, a couple years experience, but their view might be completely different than, what the traditional view is. So yeah, it's just, that was a very roundabout way to answer your question, but, yeah, I don't know if you could ever really be,
Well, I appreciate your
say you've
humility.
mastered drywall.
I appreciate your humility there. It's fun to watch you do this. I think it's great that your dad's still doing it, and that you have that generational, bouncing board that you can, have someone to talk to. I'm curious, what's your perception of, being a woman in a traditional, man's field, and how you, whether there's obstacles for you, or whether there's, after doing it for so long, your dad doing it, maybe everybody just knows you and it's not a problem, or you still face challenges being a woman in a man's world?
I've always taken it as I'm here to do a job. Someone's hired me to do a job. I'm going to show up and I'm going to do my job that you therefore are paying me for. So I really try and just keep, I work with my husband most of the time, so that's really nice. Sometimes people the most common is, oh, you brought your helper to work today, is what they'll say to my husband.
They say that?
Very kind about,
That's
yeah, oh
amazing.
yeah.
Oh,
I see you brought your helper today, and he'll be like, she's not my helper. Like,
She's
and
actually
then
the boss.
one thing that I found, I know, right? I'm like, just give me a day, and so we'll have a conversation again. But one thing that I found that helps is coming on the job and asking questions, especially when you're at the drywall stage. You kind of need to know what's going on, what the finishes are, what's going here, what's going there. So just asking questions, I found, helps a lot when it comes to being treated as a professional. 'Cause if I'm like, hey, what do you guys have going here? What's going to go here? Or, hey, this is a little funky or out of square, or your window's leaking, or, we just try to be very courteous tradespeople and let the contractor know if there's problems that arise, if there's something that we see that's weird, or we see issues. Sometimes there's roof leaks, and we'll let them know, like, hey, you guys have a leak here, or this is funky, or, we just try and just do a good job for everybody. And I think that's probably the best thing you can do being a woman on the job, is show up, get your work done, do your best, take yourself seriously, and do your job. And it doesn't have to get any more complicated than that.
Tell us about your business. It's you and your husband. You guys do 50 to 70 houses a year, I think you said. Is that
Yeah, so
true?
we
And
do
then
about a house a
so
week.
the
house
average
a week.
the average job size, kind of that kind of thing. How you and then even how you find work too.
Yeah, so the houses that we do, usually it's more like production, so they're pretty quick. We get into some customs here and there. We haven't been up to Big Sky in a couple years. It's just too hard with having a family and trying to figure all that out, because it's about an hour and a half drive up and an hour and a half drive back, and it's just miserable in the winter. So we just try and stay out of there and just stay in the valley here. So typical house is probably about 165 sheets to 200 sheets, give or take. And we try to get a coat on a day. So we'll tape, top, skim, and then texture. So if we're moving good, we can get in and out in about 4 to 5 days, depending on the job and how detailed it is. And then for the most part, we work with other drywallers. So they'll sub out work to us sometimes. Sometimes we do our own. But subbing works really well because We can kind of just pick and choose what we want to do. We'll kind of get on some big customs occasionally that nobody else wants to take on. Smooth walls, because smooth isn't super common here. So I feel like some people don't know what to do when they run into it. So that's kind of, we're really good at smooth. So we'll kind of come in and do those smooth walls too for people, and frees us up a little bit if we need to do something with our kids or travel or have other commitments. So works out really well for us.
So are you, those houses, I don't know how many sheets in a house, so that's kind of a weird way of thinking. These 2,000 square foot houses, 3,000 square foot houses kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, your board footage is, I'm sure as you know, it's walls and ceilings. So yeah, like
Right.
100, let's see, 170, so you have 170, 48s. That would be 8,160 feet of drywall board. So they're about around there, about 8,000 feet of board.
So, but how many square foot is that house? Is that a 1,500 square foot
Yeah,
house? 1,200 square?
everything's about 18 to 2,500 that we do, right in that.
And that price point in Bozeman is a
Margin.
$500,000 house?
Yeah, over $500,000.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm interested that you're working in that production world, because typically that world tends to be, wham, bam, go, get out, which you described earlier. But I guess I had assumed watching you do your work that you're do more custom stuff. It's just a misconception, I guess.
It's a little bit of both. We definitely do some custom stuff. It just depends on what's going on. And if sometimes there's jobs that are just too big, like we wouldn't take on an 800 board house. An 800 board house would be huge. That'd be like a 6,000 square foot house. Like it'd be too slow. Like we just can't do that with just two of us. We'd have to team up with somebody else, take some floors.
That makes sense.
Some of the houses are custom. We just did one 2 weeks ago that was for a builder, and it's his personal house. So that one was all custom. But we don't treat like the production stuff any differently than we do a custom. We still try and do the best that we can. I think when you take pride in your work, you don't leave things that you can make better. And that's how we treat every job. Like we walk in and like, yeah, maybe we'll not get paid for this extra 20 minutes on something, but I can't not do it. Knowing that it's wrong, I can't walk away from it and leave it, even though I might not be getting paid that price. I'm still not going to give somebody a bad product. And that's just kind of how we work.
Yeah, it's so funny, Lydia. We've been interviewing over the past day, and today we're interviewing all the different masters. You've said just so many things that everyone else has been saying the same, where I can't not do a good job. Just so many sentiments that we've all heard. There's always more to learn. I'm trying to think. There's a third one that you've said where I'm just like, man, these seem to be telltale signs of
the semester in college.
Yeah, exactly. The semester in college. That was the other. But yeah, I don't know. It's very encouraging to hear you say something like that, where I think it just shows the state of the craftswoman you are, where you can't not finish a job right or do a good job, because you take pride in your work, like you're explaining, and that's encouraging for the state of craft in America. The steel beam guy with the warp, the 3-inch difference. That that guy discourages me about the state of craft. But no, it's very, very fun to hear some of those similar comments.
Yeah, I think when you care about it, you don't want to leave it, for the next person, totally. Or you don't want to do a bad job. And I think that we're really lucky because there's a lot of people that are being vocal and are putting themselves out there that really do care about the trades and the state of craft moving forward. We're going to be short a lot of people in the next, couple years. There's a ton of people that are going to be retiring and moving out of the trades. And those of us that are still, younger, but have the trade experience, we really have to encourage these younger people and people just starting, to be good craftspeople, good tradespeople, and that it's a great job, and encourage others to get into the trade too.
So what would you say to someone who's maybe trying to jump in, become a drywaller like yourself, trying to follow in your footsteps? What would you say to them, how to get started, things that they need to be looking out for, things that they maybe need to be doing?
Um, Getting started can be a little tricky sometimes. I was lucky because I had my dad that got me started. Um, Most of the time, you're just going to wind up starting on a crew. Nobody's going to like give you a handout. You got to work your way up. So be prepared to scrape floors, sweep, do the grunt work, carry the mud boxes in, and just kind of be that person that probably is going to be like, go get this or go do that, or you got to like earn your keep kind of for those first couple of months. They really want to see what you're made of, see that you're committed to the job, and see that you're not just going to work for a couple of weeks, take your paycheck, and then quit. Because we've had employees over the years, you can usually tell within the first 3 months if they're going to stay or not.
Wow.
That's usually kind of like the lip test. Yeah, you usually like within 3 months they either like it or they quit. So, but it's going to take time, especially with drywall. It's not one of those things you can just show up on the job, pick something up, and be a master at it instantly. So you really have to be patient with it. You have to take those little wins when you have them, and you have to be a sponge, because it's such a funny craft because everybody does it a little bit differently. But even though everybody does it differently, they're going to tell you that you did it wrong because you didn't do it their way. But
Yeah.
yeah, every way's right. As long as you get a good finish and you have a good product, you didn't do it wrong. So, try different things, experiment a little bit. Try, just kind of, be easy on yourself and don't give up. And physically, it's hard. So you're going to be really tired for a while. So be prepared for that too.
So maybe starting to wrap this up. Tell us about the social media piece and how that contributes to your business. Whether it leads to work or whether it's more just an educational piece of what you're doing, and how much time does it take and stuff like that.
Yeah, it definitely leads to work, but the hard part is we're booked. Like we're right now, like we're just pretty much steady for eternity. I mean, I can't even tell you when we're gonna have. I don't know. It is what it is. We just have work all the time. So, if I wanted to, I could stop doing that, and then I could like travel around. I have people like begging me to come teach them, to come out and like, will you come do my job? If I fly you out, will you come do it? And those are things that start, unfortunately, they're not feasible. Um, but social media has been huge. It's taken its own, like that now is now a business of itself. So essentially we're running two businesses because we have the drywall shorty stuff and then we have the contractor end. But I think it's been amazing because I have had so many emails, messages about how it's helped people. They're like, I didn't think I could do this, and I watched yours, and I like look at my basement, and they send me pictures, or they're like, I was able to do this because of this, or even reaching, people that have been in the trades for a long time, and they're like, oh, why didn't I think about doing that? Like that's, light bulb moment, or starting conversations with people about different ways to finish, and just kind of trying to be kind of a drywall community where, I'll show something, but let's have a conversation about it because I know that's how I do it. How do you do it? And I think it's been really cool to see. The response was definitely not what I was expecting at all when I started this, and it's just reaching such a huge amount of people, and then bringing awareness to being a woman in the trade and just kind of the craft in general.
Doing a great job on that too. You're just killing it.
It's a lot of work. I don't think people understand. They just see like, oh, this, and it's like it's constantly on your phone trying to keep up with messages, answer questions, be a contributor to the community, and then also try and balance life, work, everything. So it's definitely it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I am impressed by all of you guys at how active y'all are in answering people and following up with them with the sheer number of followers that y'all have. It's very impressive. So it's exciting. Hey, Lydia, one kind of final fun question for you. It's if you are stranded on a desert island and you can only bring 3 tools with you, and your job on this island is to completely drywall out a house. I know it's a very realistic scenario, but if that's your task at hand, what are the tools that you would recommend to bring? And I don't know, it's kind of a fun question because it makes you think,
Yeah.
what are necessary or what are favorites, or kind of plays those lines.
So I would bring my pan. I would bring an 8-inch knife, and I would bring my stilts. Yeah, that's what I do.
Wow. So you would be hand doing it then?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can do, if I had to only pick like, yeah, if I had to come out there and do that, I would only bring those because you can't do any, you can bring the tools, but you would have nothing to wipe them down with if you didn't have a knife and a pan.
Wait, we didn't get to talk about stilts, because stilts are probably the coolest thing on the job site that drywall people get to use. What's the tallest stilt you've been on? And then how long does it take to get good on stilts?
Tallest ones are as tall as how tall are they? They're 4.5 feet, maybe. They're about as tall as me when they're all the way up. So they're like maybe like here, like eye level, maybe. So they're pretty big.
Eye level, that is so tall.
Yeah. Well, you get used to it. They're really not hard.
We gotta
The
get
biggest thing
Jackson
I think
stilts.
people do is they drag their feet. Well, you start off with them really low, and you start off at 8 foot, and you make it so you can touch the ceiling and you can touch the walls. So you kind of just look like an idiot just walking around the perimeter of the room, touching the ceiling, making sure you don't fall. But then, yeah, exactly. You kind of like get your stride down and get your gait down, and then after that, it's just completely natural. You just kind of get on them, and
You could get decent at walking on stilts in a day. Is that true?
you can walk on them in a day. You might not know what to do if you get into a tricky situation on them, because after being on them for so long, you're more than likely going to fall. Like, I've had a couple falls over the years, nothing major. We do know a guy that had a bad fall that fell into a tub and actually broke his elbow and then broke his cheek and stuff. So there's always kind of those horror stories. You got to be careful. I think that's the biggest thing is, like, don't just jump on them in the middle of some super busy job site where there's stuff all over the floor. Like, be smart about it. Take your time when you learn. But I don't know why painters don't use them more.
Interesting.
Because they're really not that hard.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a pair for when we're doing like crown and stuff. I've thought about it, but I've never.
Nail gun up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can adjust them a ton. So you can adjust how far forward, how far backwards you lean, how much spring is kind of in the stilt. There's a lot of new companies that have come out with some really cool ones that are a lot easier to walk in. They have like front springs in the toe. Yeah, they speed up ceiling work a lot.
That is really cool. That is really, really cool. Well, Lydia, we want to shout you out. We want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you. So where's the best place for people to follow you and get more great drywall content?
Yeah, so Instagram is where I started. It's still probably like my most active, especially with answering DMs and getting back to people. I'm also on Facebook and then YouTube and TikTok, so all the big ones. So I'm definitely more active, I would say, on Instagram and Facebook.
And it's
then YouTube,
it's Drywall
I'm gonna
Shorty,
start
right? At those things. Yeah.
At Drywall Shorty. So go check her out.
Yeah.
Lydia, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on here.
Been awesome.
Thanks so much for jumping on and telling us about the world of drywall.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was wonderful to talk to you guys.
Okay, take care.